So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started with news in AI. Cool. All right. So our news in AI is centered on a few different things. It's centered on language models and then images and some cool things that we've got going on. A couple are some updates to what were thought of as some limitations of these large language models. So one paper that came out that was really cool is one thing that is talked often as like a limitation of these models is that they're not really great at math, or sometimes they lose context and their assumptions of unless you use something called chain of thought prompting, you'll get your if you ask it a math question, you'll get the answer wrong very, very often. This paper took a stab at trying to improve that just with prompts. And you can see that they were successfully able to do that by improving the correct answer percentage on the multi-arithmetic data set from 78% to 92%. So it's getting 92.5% of all of the math questions asked to it correctly. And they're doing that by trying to generate not only the answer, but an algebraic prompt and a Python prompt that will lead to the correct answer. Why is this successful? Well, often with these large language models, it's not super clear, but the reason why they believe so is because these large language models are trained a lot on code, and code is a really great way for them to learn how to work within the set confines of specific rules. And so if you take a word problem and turn it into an algebraic expression and turn that algebraic expression into a Python function, then you have all three of those things and you pass them all into a prompt, then it can see exactly what you're trying to keep constant throughout the entire process and can get you the right answer much more frequently, giving you state-of-the-art 92.5% accuracy on these arithmetic or math problems. The reason why I think this is so cool, and what hopefully you guys take away from this, is that just by changing the prompt, they drastically increased the accuracy of this tool. And that's one of the biggest takeaways that we've found as the AI Pod when working with these large language models for the past few months or more, is that the better your prompt is, the better results are. So if you're running into a problem and you're like, oh man, GPT or these large language models, they can't quite do it, really encourage you to try and reframe how you're thinking about it and try and rethink, all right, how can I make the prompt better? Because you will be able to get better results. Moving along, and this is very related, these large language models are very good at in-context learning. So these models can learn from your prompt and apply that same pattern to your output extremely well. So they were able to, even if the labels are flipped. So for example, they were given sentiment, like tags, or like you can think of these as like reviews of a product, and they were told whether it was negative or positive. If the language model flipped them, right, so you can see that these are just the opposite of that, it was able to be very accurate with both of them. And so that's just like an example showing that it's able to learn very well from your prompt. And it goes a little bit more into detail there, but that's just a follow-up to what I was just saying, where if you add context to your prompt, it'll be able to learn from it. In big news around these large language models, there are a bunch of new models coming out, and they're becoming a lot more accessible. So Google's large language model is called Palm, and they're showing that it's a multimodal language model. So it's not only able to understand language, but they've definitely included video and images. So there's some sense of understanding visual concepts of these large language model by this large language model, and it's very useful for robotics, which, as if you guys have been coming to these meetings, you know that I'm particularly interested in as well. But you may be confused when you hear multimodal. Multimodal is one of those things in machine learning that happen often, where people use fancy words to describe something that I think is relatively simple, just to confuse people. But multimodal just means multi modes. One mode is text, another mode is images, another mode is videos. So multimodal just means it can understand multiple types of input. So you can ask it questions like what's in the image in emojis, how to put a yellow block on a blue plate, and it kind of describes instructions. So it can do a bunch of different things. And you can see this is what they're using to power kind of their Google robotics demos, where they're told to bring me the rice chips from the drawer. It opens the drawer, can go find the rice chips and pick it up. And this is this is the state of the art with robotics, and they were able to get here by creating this controller that uses large language models to do it. But Google is actually going to release their Palm API. And you can see kind of what that looks like. So you're right into your Google Docs, you'll be able to use AI. And not only is it going to help you, give you kind of suggestions, but you'll be able to insert it directly and make modifications. It's going to be able to prototype ideas, do prompt engineering, generate data, and more. The waitlist is going to be available soon. I'm pretty sure this was posted literally today, an hour ago. So, hot off the presses for you guys, but Google is releasing theirs as well, probably in response to supposedly GPT-4 releasing in 2 days. So keep your fingers crossed for that. We'll see if it gets released. Last week in Germany, Microsoft, one of the higher ups in Microsoft leaked that it was going to be releasing next week, and also was multimodal. So can definitely see Google trying to just play, be kind of up to speed with the new releases as well. And not to be outdone, Meta actually released their own large language model called Llama, but they kind of fumbled the release where they said it's open source, but only for researchers, so no one can really use it. But then the weights got leaked, so now they're out there, but no one who kind of follows rules will use it. But it's still really powerful. And so like the people who don't want to release it are saying, well, bad actors are going to be using it, but the bad actors are already using it. So interesting kind of rollout there, but fine-tuned, it is smaller and better performing than DaVinci 03 model. And they were able to recently get Llama working on a consumer Mac. So this is a big deal because people are going to start having access to these large language models on consumer machines rather than having to rely on these really big or just these APIs where you're essentially using somebody else's machine to run these. It's pretty exciting. It's kind of, people are calling it almost the stable diffusion moment for these large language models. Stable diffusion obviously being when these text to image models got released to everybody and were able to be run on a single computer. Speaking of, some updates there really quickly. They released stable diffusion for Blender. So if you are an artist and you're interested in trying to create 3D scenes, you can render to image, you can install it really easily, and it can do a bunch of really cool things. And so you can see, like, people will create low fidelity examples in Blender, and then you can just type in what you want in your prompt and choose a certain model. And once you add, when you click on Dream, it will go ahead and create some different kind of skins or stylizations for your content on Blender. So I think that's pretty cool. A lot of other tools like this are coming out. So here's an example of somebody in VR drawing and using something called ControlNet, which we showed in our last demo that we're implementing to Nouns AI, where you can just kind of draw and then get like you can pass it through Stable Diffusion, get it fully rendered, and you can see that kind of shown in a 3D space here, which I thought was pretty cool. And the last couple that I've got showing that the diffusion policy, so you can use diffusion to also move and control robots and have it be pretty robust. So you can see here it's getting things are getting moved as it's trying to act with the objects, and it's still able to perform well because these diffusion models are really good at helping it adapt to change. Last little cool one, somebody released for anybody interested in typography. They kind of use Stable Diffusion to turn just words into kind of visual representations of things that are related. So you can see here, it's turning yoga into these yoga poses. It's turning the frog into a frog, and I think it's just the pea into a princess. And I think it's cool to see these kinds of things because it's showing just how creative people are, and the fact that you can apply these to a lot of different use cases that that no one's thought of yet. Yeah, because this is brand new technology, so there's so many different things you can do with it, and no one's applied it to kind of all the places that it can be applied yet. All right. Man, I keep saying the last one, and they all keep being pretty good. This is another one where they were able to recreate. If somebody got shown an image, they were able to use Stable Diffusion to turn, like they were able to take an MRI output of somebody's brain and recreate the image that they were looking at using Stable Diffusion, which is pretty bonkers in my opinion. But I'm not going to spend too much time on that because don't think about that one too much. And you can, if you're interested in trying to get into it, trying to get your hands dirty with these large language models or with these tools in general, Hugging Face just made it so that you can use all of their transformers or all of their models using JavaScript, if you're more familiar with that. Or there's a notebook called GLaDOS Chatbot, or you can look up Minimaxer on Twitter, who created a very easy to follow Colab notebook if you want to start messing with the ChatGPT API, where you just type in a system prompt to give it information about what it is. And then all you got to do is you've just got to create, you've just got to add in a little bit of context so you can, just immediately start chatting with it, given the context that you've passed in above. So really easy to run. You just got to pass in an OpenAI API key. And can kind of teach you a little bit of how to use these systems. All right, so those were kind of news in AI. It's been a little bit since I saw you guys last, so had a few things I wanted to cover, but hopefully you guys found that interesting. We can go ahead and jump right into our updates now. I'm going to start by turning it over to Honk to talk about Honk and his team to talk a little bit about some of the updates that he's got cooking for the playground.
I don't want to steal Bust in this fire, but I'm just going to go give a little sort of quick demo of some of the stuff that is going on. All right, whatever. All right, so here we now have the ability to actually log in and register. It might be a different password. Yeah, there we go. So now you can actually log in and have your accounts back. That's one thing. Whenever you're generating images, it's very much the same as prior. These options that we had previously are still here. They're just hidden. There's a URL here, which is still being worked on. This is, again, rough. It's all just kind of like, this is very rough. Just keep that in mind. But the general idea is that you can choose some music, play, pause, kind of like what we had before, and just as what you've seen in the prior demos. And again, keep in mind, this is very rough. The, polish has not been applied for UI. You can go ahead and add some images. And then you can go ahead and click create video. And what that'll do is it will create a, it'll go ahead and it'll create a video that you can then call. I just want to call this because it actually happens pretty quickly. Previously, it would take an hour to make a video, whereas now it takes as long as this request is going to take. That's due to a lot of playing around with different sort of implementations for video creation, as well as a lot of frustration. But So we should see something come up here pretty shortly. I mean, this previously would have probably taken, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. So if we go here, we can see this video. The sound doesn't, the audio isn't synced up yet, but you can see it runs through. So that was one implementation, and this was a means of being able to get video generation a lot faster. One of the difficulties with this is that this model isn't really well retaining, or it's not really retaining very well at all of what noggles are. And so you'll notice that here. Again, it is very fast, which is great. So I'm going to be playing around with things. We might need to make another model. But generally speaking, what needs to happen here is what's known as frame interpolation, which is where you just go from one grid of pixels like this to another, like this. And so everything in between. And there are a few different implementations of that. So I'm just playing around trying to get that down. And the hope is to have, frame interpolation, have this video generation release to you all again this week. It's going to be going through a few different phases. But in order to have this working, you'll notice that images are loaded. Bustin's done all of this. And this is local caching, which is something that Moo helped out with as well. And Moo is currently...
so that means you're not going to lose your video order at Joshua Fisher. It's going to stay the same no matter what if you refresh, which is huge.
Yeah. So if you were to refresh this and reopen it, you'll see that you still have your images. The order, so the images that you were associated with it, the order is something that still needs to be reestablished. But if you notice, the 3 that were chosen here are still here.
Actually, the order does load. It just takes 3 seconds. Yeah.
Oh, my bad. Okay. Well, so that's that. And as mentioned, Moo's currently making the application functional, which is just a means for just saying like it'll be a lot easier to continue building on. So that's kind of the high level here. Bustin, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, well, I think you kind of covered everything. That was the high level. I think next steps on the editor for sure is just like making sure it looks nice and the UX UI great. So yeah.
Yep. So that's what we got.
Awesome. One thing that that didn't mention, which I'm super excited about, and hopefully you guys are too, is that you're with these new frame interpolation methods. Not only is it faster, but it also means that we can take any image in and any image out. So what that means is we're not limited to what we had before, which was you have to save a specific, like you have to have generated that image with Stable Diffusion in order to have it in your video. Now you can use things from image to image, or you can use things from, when you used words to describe a change to a prompt to change an image. Or you can upload raw photographs or your own film or a short video content that like short video from real life. And we'll be able to add it into our timeline. So you can merge real video or maybe video that you filmed before, or maybe, you animated with, After Effects, if that's what you use. And you can add it in there and then use AI to fill in gaps or to make certain parts of it. So that's the part that we're really excited about, is that we're now starting to get into this phase where you're going to be able to connect real content and fake content, or AI content, and you'll be able to bring in content from wherever you want. And we think that this is kind of the start of it really becoming a content studio for anything Nounish, because we're going to add in this ability to put a sticker, like a Noggle sticker on anything, and then you'll be able to pass it into the model, and it'll be able to immediately include that within a video content. So really excited about that. A couple things, we have this timeline that we're starting to stick towards, that we're trying to stick towards, and may be accelerated even further. But one thing I want to highlight that's coming soon is we will be running our own prop house. We will be running a prop house soon for running our next competition, and that is going to happen probably in early April. So start thinking about ideas on how we can maximize the reach of these tools. We're in building mode now, but we are very much so focused on how we can increase reach. We have a live show potentially getting planned in the LA area that's going to be able to use some Nouns AI visuals, and we're going to make sure that we get a hype video from that so that we can showcase what's possible with live experiences using this content. So a lot of things that are exciting in the pipeline. So don't forget about us, while we're in this building mode. But just wanted to give you guys some updates there. All right. Next up, we've got the Knowledge Hub. I am so excited to give some updates about the Knowledge Hub because we haven't in a while. But to kind of get you guys an idea of where we're at and where we're going, I want to start with this timeline of the Knowledge Graph or the Knowledge Hub. So to summarize, the initial goal of the Knowledge Hub was just to be able to answer questions that people have asked before somewhere, right? We have a lot of different Discords, we have a lot of different calls. There are a lot of the same questions asked in one place and then asked again another, and being able to answer those questions we think would be really valuable. But that, as we were working on that, we realized that to do that, we needed to find a way to put together a really great repository of nounish data, nounish knowledge that we could pull from. And that has sent us down this hole of trying to use these large language models, not to give it data and ask information from it, but also to give it unstructured data like our chat logs or our proposals and turn that into structured content. So what do I mean by that? I mean a wiki. And so we can already see an example version here, but Steve's been grinding, trying to, one, figure out how to set up a wiki, but two, find other people who know how to set up the wiki. And so has been deep in the wiki-based community and has found some great people to help. So as an example, or actually not an example, but all right, cool. Here we go. I think you guys can still, oh no, you guys can't see that. Let me make sure I'm sharing my full screen. Cool. All right. So this is, an example. This is our write-up from our wiki-based developer, talking about the tasks that Steve gave him, talking about how we want a knowledge graph. Like, we had been working on a knowledge graph, and those of you that have been coming to these meetings, you guys should be familiar with that image of that huge knowledge graph of all these different entities that came from proposals. But we're trying to turn that knowledge graph into a wiki, so it can be exportable and it can be overwritten and it can be constantly updated. So it can be constantly updated by these automatic systems that we're putting in place, but also have it possible for humans to be able to moderate it. So long story short, we're going to try and create an auto-updating Nouns wiki from our proposals, from our on-chain votes, and from all of the Discord chats that we're getting to provide updates to those entities over time. We thought it was crazy. You couldn't go anywhere and click on proposal 156 and then find out everything about that proposal, then find out about the chats that happened afterwards, and what happened to that proposal. There's nowhere we can go to just see that for everything. And we've already made like a pretty good step in that direction. And you can see that he took this developer took an extract of our knowledge graph and created all of these these example content from all of these entities in this wiki. So what does that mean? So let's go to, actually I think it was this one, or was it the last one? These are all the relationships. What about all the nodes? I think that's what we're looking for. Which one? Where'd we go? Sorry. 1 second. Not that one. Not that one. Sorry. Might be this one. Yeah, I think it's this one. All right. Where? Oh, okay. All right. Here we go. So these are all these different entities, and this is only from a subset of proposals. And so here's an example of what these entities look like. So Nouns DAO, it was able to pull Nouns DAO, and it's a node, so like it's its own entity. And these are kind of the relationships it has. So lives and dies by the quality of the decision making, the time demand of being a good voter, and participation. So it was able to pull out from a proposal the Nouns DAO had lives and dies by these 3 key things, and that I think proves true. And these are just an example of what these statements might look like, and it will constantly be updated over time and become pretty difficult for humans to read this. But what's cool is that we'll be able to take all those relationships and when they were sourced, right, and have almost an activity log of all of these different events that occurred to each different entity. And we'll keep track of these in an automatically populating wiki. So then when somebody asks a question about Nouns DAO, we'll be able to pass in all this information into the prompt as context so that it will be able to understand more about the relationships between objects or items and a summary of what that object or entity is and what's happened in activity with that entity over time. And looking at your chat, Joshua, would it make sense to create a Twitter prompt for highlighting tweets to capture, similar to what Remind Me Not does? Yeah, so pulling in data from Twitter or pulling in data from other sources, like I know Maddie's newsletter is one that Steve brought up. Another that was brought up was this idea, like on-chain votes. There's a lot of data that we want to bring in, including Twitter. But right now we're just trying to use like the proposals and chat because that's what we have ingested to try and make this a first pass at this. And this is great because this is going to be able to have us not only answer questions that have already been asked before, but we've got a demo right here of our machine learning developer who is working on an evaluation pipeline here. And right now, the evaluation pipeline, what that means is we have like a bunch of questions that have never been answered before, and we're able to ask it questions based on like that entire knowledge graph that we've built already. Right now, only about 20% accurate, but that's okay because we just put it together and it's able to with 20% accuracy answer any question about nouns that anybody asks out of the example questions that we've got, which I think is really cool because that means that we get to just continue to improve on this pipeline. Everything is working, and we just have a number that we've got to make go up, which is a lot easier to iterate on than when you're just kind of trying to iterate based on feel. And what an example here is, what is Nouns AI and at what date was it discussed is an example query that might be asked. What happens is it's not just a single step process where it tries to look it up. It breaks it down into a bunch of different information, pulls out queries, keywords, tries to find out extracted relationships from there. So, the keywords that I pulled out were date, nouns, and AI. And then it starts the query and looks through to find query keywords. It's got a whole bunch of them, is able to pull out, nouns, AI pod, Nouns DAO, and then ends up like pulling that information from the knowledge graph where you can see the Nouns AI pod, what date, 1104, and ends up giving us an answer. The Nouns AI is a pod that was discussed on November 4th. It's a proposal to fund 3 months of continuing to bring Rocco to life, exploring AI generated media and community. So this was, this is based off the proposal that was passed in November 4th, our first proposal. So that's how this was able to generate that answer. So I'm pretty excited about the prospect of everything that Knowledge Hub holds. This is where we've been putting a ton of time, and I'm really excited to see that we're starting to get some results in the form of these questions being answered, our pipelines being fully created, and the wiki starting to come together. So yeah, I don't know, Steve, do you have anything to add there? I know I was just rambling and talking for a while, but a lot of what this is, and a lot of the reason that we have anything to show right now is because Steve's been putting in so much work on his side to get this all together. So Steve, anything to add?
Yeah, sorry. Like I missed probably like the last 15 minutes. The power went out in my room specifically. Anyway, so I don't know what you covered, but I'll just give the TLDR really quick on the way I see it is that ultimately, like if you look up Wikidata, one of the first things you'll see that really was so appealing for me is that it's a knowledge base that's half machine generated, half human curated or generated, right? So the idea is we're using AI to build a knowledge graph for everything nouns. And this all ties back, by the way, to what we've been working on. We're not pivoting. This just makes what we were working on a much stronger foundation. And at the same time, we're building a huge knowledge tree of the entire nouns DAO. But ultimately, what it'll be is it'll be like a glorified Wikipedia with everything nouns, but it'll have all entity relationships. And then in addition to all the relationships and entities being linked together, we're going to have the Wikipedia layer on top of it, which is Wikibase and Wikidata. That has textual content on the entities, right? And so what's the purpose of all this besides having a nouns wiki? It's like, oh, a nouns wiki, great. Well, the whole reason for having it is that whenever you have a knowledge graph backing up Q&A systems, tools that empower governance, tools that help you vote, read proposals, well, the knowledge graph is going to help power that, right? We're going to have all the different people who participate in the DAO. Ultimately, the dream is to like have it token gated, so anybody with a nouns token or a nouns delegate can edit the wiki. We have entire history behind it, and even though there will be some centralized point of moderation, like you kind of have to, right? Like Wikipedia has like their moderators and stuff. What we'll have is factual data, and the idea is that we'll have a lot less hallucination when Roku starts answering questions, right? And hallucination is spitting out bullshit answers, which it does now, which is why I haven't really been letting that feature go live because I don't like a lot of the answers. I'm not happy with them. And in order for me to be happy with them, we need a strong foundation. We need like a knowledge graph that we can use AI to build, but have humans curate and solidify the factual content on. And once we have that, then we can start building a ton of cool tools like Q&A systems that don't bullshit, or at least minimize the bullshitting. In addition to governance tools, right? Like, hey, well, for instance, what do I mean by governance tool? I don't want to go into a whole tandem here, but like just 15 more seconds is like if we have imagine a knowledge graph which has an entire wiki front end that shows you how somebody's voting and other people who vote like that, and then we're able to run sentiment analysis and looking at the types of proposals that people are voting yes on, no on, and all the different variables in those proposals. Are they tech proposals? Are they creative proposals? How much ether is involved relative to our treasury, relative to ether price? So once we have all that data and we have it all linked, then we're going to really start being able to build these cool governance tools that can really help people and encourage them to vote more, because it's fun when you have tools like this helping you vote. And one of the things I'd love to see, besides having just a Q&A bot, is really building tools that can help DAOs with governance. So we all have our people whose ideals we mostly align with. It's always hard to be 100% with somebody's ideals, but like I know I'm going on vacation who I'm delegating my nouns to because a lot of my ideals align with theirs. So I wouldn't mind finding more people like them as the DAO grows and seeing how they're voting and having that data in front of me and having tools that can kind of help me shape my decisions on proposals I'm uncertain of, but I want to participate in. So yeah, that's my TLDR. Shep.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, no, I mean, really exciting stuff, and I'm very excited for the grand vision. We're gonna try and give you goodies along the way. On top, not only just focusing on kind of, this is a lot to build. So, we've been putting a lot of time into it, and it's gonna take a sec before we get something that is totally up and running. But we're gonna try and give you guys some features along the way, including.
I don't think I lost internet.
No, you didn't lose it. I'm pretty sure it's Shep.
All right. Well, Steve, you're doing such a good job talking. Do you want to finish up what he was saying?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much finished my thought. I'd be much more interested in fielding any questions if anyone has any. Because I feel like I'm just rambling. I have a lot on. I'm pretty excited about this. So, and there's a lot to do. But what I feel, the last month really gave us is insight into how to build these things the right way. It's part of the research process, but we have a pretty good grasp on it. But I'd love to be able to answer any questions anyone has in regards to the Knowledge Hub, section of the app. What's up, Panda? I see you got your mic off mute. Yeah, looks like Shep got.
How long before Rocco can vote for us?
That's a good question. I mean, I think not tomorrow, but I think it would be pretty cool. It's also tricky, right? Because there's not that much data, right? So even though we can have him vote for us, based on the data that's already there, the question is the short answer is you might not be happy with the way he votes, right? So right now, I'm more or less interested in being able to see the data, right? Being able to have all the entities linked, how people are voting.
So
there you are.
Yeah, I guess my internet went down. My bad. But yeah, that was the end of what I had for you guys. So I guess I'll take any questions that we got. But otherwise, this is.
Yeah, it's almost like you would want a TLDR and a recommendation from Rocco on how you would probably vote or something like that, right?
Yeah, so like this is a really fun topic. It's not one that like we've like really dug into because we've been more focused on like after the first pass of questions and answers, I was just so unsatisfied that I was like, I'm not putting this thing live. Like we have to do more work. Like the data is obviously not good enough yet. So but one of the things I said, we need to, if we're already going to go through the trouble of curating a rich and mostly human vetted data set on nouns, we should be able to also handle, be able to build tooling around governance. Right? And the idea besides governance, it's almost like making governance fun, right? Like, because participation is kind of weak. Like you see these, 200 to 10 votes once in a while, but like if you look at it by delegate, it's mostly like, maybe 20 unique wallets that are voting. And I just think it would be so cool. Like I know right now, Brian has a bot that tells you whenever of a proposal is ending or a new proposal is on chain. And I'm just kind of just bullshitting off the top of my head here. Like as far as like the ideas that are in my head, they don't necessarily align with what Honk or Shep has. Just to make it clear, we're still fleshing the governance details out. On Q&A, we're pretty much all on the same page. For governance, it's open-ended, and I'd love feedback from anyone here because I know you guys are pretty passionate about this stuff. But like the idea is that like if we have an entire knowledge graph, right, of all the voters, prolific voters, DAO members that are and their delegates that are voting, and that's metadata that'll have to be captured, right? Just because I own a noun, but my delegate voted another way doesn't mean that that's how I would vote, right? So we capture all this data. And then we break down what is in the proposal, right? Is it a tech proposal? Is it a creative arts proposal? How much, some people are more conservative Some people don't really care as long as the proposal is great as far as like the allocation of the treasury that's going to it, right? So there's all these different factors there. There's a lot of variance. There's a lot of it's a very subjective process, obviously, but if we can break it down into meaningful data, link all these things into a graph, right, and show somebody, it's almost like you can go into like a politician's Wikipedia and get their entire history of how they voted, and everyone has like who they would align with. Ideally, we'd be able to build a tool that can look, where you can put in your inputs, and it'll tell you how you most likely would, what kind of result that somebody of that profile would vote on a proposal, right? That's like a super basic first pass type thing.
One thing I'm also really excited about is, and this goes to, I think, something that's like currently being discussed a little bit, where it's like it's tough to it's kind of tough to keep up with everything that's going on in Nouns, right? And it's tough to even be able to know where to discuss those things, right? Like, whether, like who's talking about what and where. Maybe it's in a Discord server, maybe it's on, a weekly call. I'm sure there's a ton of people that have no idea what we're doing here at Nouns AI, because they're not able to make this call that, this time that we have our call slotted for. So what I think is really cool about this is that we're going to be able to set up a wiki where not only does it have information about everything that's done before, but one thing that I think is going to be really important is that we're going to have a page that is going to show you the updates of what happened this week. What's happening right now. What are the new things that are getting added to the wiki on an ongoing basis, and where did they come from? Who's involved, right? Like, the important part of being able to answer questions for us is not just being able to provide the answer, but to give you a link to the people that were discussing the question prior and where they were discussing it, so you can reach out to them and engage in that conversation. We want to make it really easy for new people to join Nouns and be able to see all the stuff that's happening, so that maybe they find an area within Nouns that they find really exciting, and that's where they go put most of their energy. But at the same time, we want to make it easy for people who have been in Nouns for a long time that may have had to lean out for 1 week, or may have focused on one side of one area of things. Maybe it be like smart contracts, like the verbs team, and they've been zoomed in there, so haven't been able to see some of the other parts of it and want to, right? Like, being able to see all of the updates that are happening on a weekly basis, and kind of like getting a bird's eye view of everything that is Nouns, I think is super exciting, and something that will be helpful for, like I said, not only people onboarding for the first time, but people who have been here, and may feel like the amount of content can get a little bit overwhelming sometimes.
I agree with that.
And one more cool thing that that's also on the pipeline. Again, not promising it for tomorrow, but we will ship it. Is trending topics across the DAO, which I think is kind of more important than ever, since we're so decentralized now. There's so many different conversations happening on so many different social medias, right? Between Twitter, Farcast, Discord, etc. So it'd be kind of cool, being able to see what people are discussing, and summaries of conversations, right? And the hard part there is just kind of filtering out the noise, which is the current bottleneck, right? People are having conversations, but we want to make sure that we're summarizing the good stuff, not the how was golf on Sunday chatter.
Not sure who asked that, but great question. Anyone else have anything else? Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for showing out. Again, really encouraging to see familiar faces. Thank you guys for keep showing up here and encouraging us. Hopefully you guys learned some stuff. This is the end of our bi-weekly Nouns AI call, and we will see you guys back here in 2 weeks.